All right, so the next rack we're going to talk about is instrument racks. Instrument racks are kind of like the drum rack. The drum rack has a chain, and each chain has an instrument and an effect on it. And an instrument rack is like the chain part of this. It's the part that has the instrument and the effect. So, for example, let's say I'm working with a sound here. Let's just use a sound that comes with I'm just going to use a simpler sound, and we're going to use a bass. All right, cool. So I got this here. So I've got this basic bass sound. Wait, hold on a second. Let's get the right track. Cool. Okay, and that sound is okay. It's like this, kind of deep bass. Let's make it sound a little bit more like a 808 type of sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull my sustain all the way down, pull my decay up to about 1.29 seconds, my release up to about the same. Okay. Turn this note off. And in here, cool, that's all right. I like that right there. Move that back over like that. There we go. Cool. Awesome. Okay, so I like that basic bass line there. Let's go ahead and mute the drums. Okay, cool. That's a decent little sound. Let's go ahead and put some effects on it to make it sound better. So what we can do is we create an instrument rack by selecting all the devices you want in the rack, hold Shift and hit Command G. We don't have any effects on here yet, so let's go ahead and put some effects on here. So I've got my basic instrument here that I dragged in. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead over to audio effects, and I'm just going to use the sounds that come with Ableton Live. First of all, I'm going to go ahead and put a EQ on here. I'm going to use the EQ8, which is the one that we mostly use in here. There we go, and it's done at 30 hertz, which is fine. I'm going to put it down to 25 hertz. Put a little bit less. Actually, I'll put it at 30, but less of a drastic curve there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a glue compressor on here. And put that attack up. There we go. I'm not going to compress it a whole lot here. Cool. Okay. Sounding pretty good there. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put a saturator on here, and the saturator is kind of like a tape emulation. This is going to warm it up quite a bit and make it deeper. There we go. And I use the preset here a bit warmer by opening this up right here and dragging the preset onto the track. Now let's say we like this sound. Maybe let's put a filter here on the end as well. We'll use the auto filter here, and the auto filter we'll put right after the glue compressor. There we go. And you can hear I can open it up or really close it down there to make it really, really deep. Okay. And we can start like that. And what I'll do here is, let me put my keyboard into Ableton Live mode. There we go. So now I can just control it with my keyboard here. Cool. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of these. So I click on the first one. I'm going to scroll over to this last one here, hold down Shift, and it selects all of them in between. This is pretty standard stuff for any DAW. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command G. And when I do that, notice how it put this kind of box around it here on the left-hand side. It's really hard to see. You can just see it because you can just see this box just open up here. I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that real quick so you can see it again. I click on the instrument, I scroll over to the right, hold down Shift, click on the last effect, and I hit Command G, and watch what happens. Watch this space over here on the left. I'm going to hit Command G right now, boom, and you see it put like a little extra thing here. Now I can still have control over all my effects inside of it, but I also, when I click on this one, it selects everything, and at the end it also put like an extra little box. Now, like I said, it's pretty hard to see what's going on there. You get used to it, but it's not super easy to identify in the beginning if you have your effect rack on or not. But if I open up some of these here, it makes it a little bit easier to see what's going on here. So now we can see it is an instrument rack, and if I click on the instrument rack itself, it selects all the effects and instruments and everything inside of it. Now what I want to do is I want to make it so my instrument rack, when I move the filter here, it's going to move, when I move one of these macro knobs over here, it moves this filter. Now the macro knobs are knobs that can be assigned to any parameter inside of the rack itself. So you can have it controlling multiple parameters, any parameter at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to map my filter frequency here to macro 1. Click on map. Oh, it's going to crash my Ableton Live. I'm not sure why. Mine has always done that, and I'm not sure where the glitch comes from. Mine does not like to be mapped. So I actually don't map them anymore because it just stopped working at one point. And it's, I mean, this is like years ago it stopped working, and it's pretty annoying, but I'm not sure if it's because of why it's like that. But anyway, that's what you most. I don't think everybody has that same problem. But when I click map and I try to map it to something in here, it always like messes stuff up. So I'm not going to do that. But basically, that's what these macro knobs are for. They allow you to map multiple things. It's not something I've ever really used that much, so it didn't bother me that it crashes. But it is something that has traditionally, for me, crashed. Okay, sorry, my dog just wanted to get off my lap. All right, so hopefully you'll have better luck with that than I ever do. But it's. Okay, let's try it one more time and see if we can get this to work right here. Let me just save this. Hold on one second. Where's teaching? Rex. All right, so let's try that one more time. I'm going to close these other ones down here, and the way I'm doing this, I can just double click on the name of the instrument or effect, and it just kind of makes it smaller so you can save space on your screen here. So I can just see my auto filter is right here. It doesn't turn it off, it just makes it smaller on the screen. Does the same thing happen with right-click mapping? Oh, let's try. Oh, James, thank you. For some reason, I never even noticed about the right-click mapping. Interesting. Huh. Thanks. You're teaching me stuff, James. Let's see. That's hilarious. I didn't even know you could right-click map these things. It's like so funny, like where my holes are in this program, which is like not very many, but that was one. Awesome. Thanks. All right. So yeah, right-click on it and you can map it to the knob. Now, what I want to show you here, since we've got this working right now, I'm going to right-click map this one here, right-click, and map it to the frequency knob as well. Now, what's going to happen is when I turn it to the right, you see it's moving both of these at the same time. Okay. Also, the other problem we have is that when you mouse over it, not a problem, but when you mouse over it, it gives you that red line down across the bottom. It says, hey, this parameter is controlled by the macro control macro 1 of the enclosing rack. So I can't grab this and move it by myself. Now I have to grab it and move it with this here. Now, notice how this is moving quite a bit. It's a lot more. What I wanted to do is I wanted to slowly get more as it goes to the right, but I don't want it to go as much as it's going right now. Actually, I'm going to map these to macro 2, not macro 1. There we go. Because I like this knob is a little bit better knob on my keyboard. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust these so they do different amounts. Okay, I'm going to keep this frequency the way it is, but I'm going to change the resonance. The way we do that is I click on the map button here, and you notice up top it shows me what my mappings are. So I'm going to take this autofill to resonance. I'm going to change it so it only goes up to, let's say it goes up to 50%. Now, what's going to happen is, when I move the knob, instead of going up all the way, I want it to hit my maximum about right there. So I'm going to have it be right there. Let's see. So let's put this up at 75% rather. There we go. Yeah, that's much better. So that's where I want it to go to, right about there. I'm going to click and drag this down until it's right about where I want it to be. Cool, so 60%. Now, when I play that sound, I can pull it back. You hear how it brings out that click a little bit more. If you want a little bit more of that knock on there. Okay, so I can play these. Now, I can pull that back. And you hear how it kind of changes the sound there. Now, one thing I could also do is I could also take it and make it drive this a bit more here. I could have it turn the soft clip on so it's not clipping. I can pull it up to about right here. Let's put it up to 14, and I can assign it to the same knob. So what I can do is go ahead and do this thing that James just taught me, right click on this, macro knob 2. So now these are all controlling, whoops, over here. There we go. See how it's controlling that? But I want to click on my map button here to make it so it's only going down to, let's have it so it goes reversed. Let's try it like this first. So I'm going to set this one to 14 dB and this one to 0 dB. And this is basically the minimum and max are constraining it so it's not going all over the place. So you can see here, Aria. What are you talking about Aria right now? Aria. We are talking about Ableton Live right now, Kai. We'll come back to Aria during Zoom. All right, so now also, if you're doing Aria stuff right now, you're like way off base because we should be focused on Ableton Live right now. Yeah, Aria is not important. It's just, yeah, anyway. So you hear how this changes the sound even more. Right? It's controlling 3 knobs here that are really shaping that sound a lot. And it's making a much nicer, more interesting sound. Cool. And that's using this macro knob here. Now I can let's see, can I rename? Yeah, I can rename it just by hitting Command R and then calling this one filter or drive rather. It's more of a drive type of thing. So there we go, Command R, and I can rename that there. So that's a really cool thing that you can do, map them up, have them adjust like that. And like I said, I haven't heard of a lot of people saying they're having problems with that map button. It's just something that I've traditionally had problems with. Not 100% of the time, just like 90% of the time for me. Thanks, James, for coming in with a save on that one. That's awesome there. So now we've got this rack here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save this. I can rename the instrument itself first if I want to. I can hit Command R and call this one sub-bass Tony and hit enter. And now it's called sub-bass Tony. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and save that in here. So I'm going to click on the disk here. Sub-bass Tony, boom, there we go. So now anytime I want to drag this back in, I can drag it back in, I can use it. But remember the assignment that talked about setting up your own Ableton plugins. Well, what I would recommend doing is if you've set that up on your computer, you should have your program, your thing that says Ableton plugins or Ableton presets or whatever it says. And whatever you decided to call it. And in here you can see I've got a thing called bass. And so I've got one bass in here because I don't really use this that much. Like for my own basses, I usually set them up inside the instruments themselves. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to my user library, and both of these, I'm going to just shift click them and drag them in here, keeping my mouse held down. I'm going to drag them up here into my bass folder. And what this does is it now saves it into my, I think this lives, where does this live? Does this live in my presets? Yeah, this lives in my Dropbox. So now, anywhere I go in the world, as long as I have Ableton Live, if I'm using somebody else's computer, I have access to my presets and stuff. And a lot of these are Ableton Live specific, or some of them use like third-party plugins. But a lot of these are like Ableton Live for, like, I can use them anywhere. So just some cool presets that I've made over the years in here. And so that's what I do. I save it as a rack and I drag it into this folder here. So it's saved for wherever I want to work. Okay, so just going through that right there is create an instrument rack by selecting all the devices you want in the rack, hold down Shift and hit Command G. If you want to save the instrument rack for another session, Command R to rename it, then hit the disk button and use macros to assign multiple parameters to one knob. Click the macro button, or as we learned, right click on it and then just map it to the proper parameter macro knob that you want. Okay, now if we want to Midi Map Parameters, and what this does is allows me to use my knobs and faders to control things, then we can use Command M to enter MIDI mapping mode, which is also this button up here. If I click on the MIDI button like that, and see how everything turns blue. And then what I do is I just say I want to map that to some specific knob or something. So for example, if I wanted my bass here to be mapped to a knob on my keyboard, I click on the bass down here and I turn the knob on my keyboard, and you see how it maps it. And we can see over here it mapped it up here. If this is open, you'll see these things open up, and you can see it's got a minimum and a maximum. I can hit Command M, turn that off, and now I can adjust this here. Let me go ahead and turn my color on here. There we go, see? I can adjust that color there. To make some adjustments to the sound there. Okay. So that's how you can use any controller to map things in Ableton Live, and it's all right here in the notes. Command M to enter mapping mode, select the parameter you want to map, adjust the knob you want to map to, and then Command M to exit the mapping mode. While you are in mapping mode, you can restrict or flip the amount of how much the parameter is being affected by the controller movement. Do this in the upper left-hand corner in the browser window, and that's what we just talked about up here. When I put it into MIDI mapping mode, it pulls up my parameters that are mapped up here, and it'll be like a list. If I have a whole bunch of different parameters mapped, it's going to be a long list over here, and it all just pops up here. And this is really when you're your templates come in handy. Because if you have a whole bunch of stuff that you want to have mapped with different drum kits, like let's say you're making house music and you have like a drum kit that you like and a bass sound that you like and this and that and the other, and you want to use those for all different sounds, then it really helps to have it as a template and have everything mapped out so you can just grab things and move them. I've got a friend who's got a whole bunch of stuff mapped out to his keyboards. All his like soft synths and things are mapped out, and it works really well. It makes his production really, really smooth and quick. Cool. And effect racks is the final racks we're going to talk about here. I'm not going to say this is a separate video because it's pretty much exactly the same as what we just talked about. They work the same as instrument racks, just without the instruments. You can use Command G to create an instrument rack and use macros to control multiple parameters at once. So for example, if let's recreate that bass sound again. So I'm going to go in here to my instruments. I'm going to go to simpler, and I'm going to go to bass, and I'm going to go to let's go to no, I don't like that one. I like this one better. Okay, so we're going to grab this B bass, and I'm going to go ahead and set it up how I just did again. So I'm going to pull the sustain all the way down, set my decay to, what was it, set to like 259, right? I think it was like around there, 259-ish. Yep, there we go. Cool. All right, so there's that. Dog, you put your head on the keyboard, and of course you're going to wake up when I hit the keyboard. Every time I'm hitting the keys on the keyboard, my dog is waking up because she has her head on half the keyboard. All right, so we got this here. Now let's say I want to keep the sound separate, but I want to make a similar type of rack to what I just did for elongating and kind of filtering out the high frequencies for bass sounds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to my audio effects, and I'm going to go ahead and put a EQ here. And the reason why I'm using this first EQ, just to kind of explain things as I go, is because for sub sounds, you really don't need all those sub frequencies. So anything below 30 hertz, you don't need really. There's speakers are not big enough to really recreate these like low sub 30 frequencies, 30 hertz frequencies. And so you actually can get more power out of the sound by shaving those off. So I always shave off the 30 hertz, and then we're going to go ahead and put the glue compressor in here. Let's go ahead and pull that down, pull this attack up so we get a little bit of bump on the beginning. Cool. Awesome. Make that up, pull that down. Cool. So that's getting our sound a little bit better there, a little bit more sustained. Now let's go ahead and put the saturator on here. We're going to use the same one, a bit warmer. Awesome. Yeah, I don't want to turn that color on there. Sounds a little bit warmer with that DC off. Yeah, nice and rumbly there. And let's put the filter on after the warmer this time, just to kind of. Now what we're going to do here is I'm going to highlight all the devices on here except for the instrument. So instead of clicking on this one here, the instrument, I'm going to start with my EQ, scroll to the right, hold down Shift, and click on that filter there, and I'm going to hit Command G. And now it just grouped those effects together. So the instrument is not inside of the rack right here. I'm going to go ahead and open up my macros here. I'm going to give this a name. We're going to call this one sustain. Let's see here. Warm, filter, sustained. Cool. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. Click on the disk button, warm filter, sustain, boom. There we go. And let's go ahead and assign some macros in here. So we'll assign this to macro 1. Let's do this one to macro 1 as well. Same thing here. And now I've got all those assigned. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to click the map button. It's going to pull this up. So macro 1 a bit warmer. Set that to, what do we have that at? 14. Set the minimum to 0. This one here was set to 60%. And we don't need to go down all the way to 26. Let's go down to, let's say 50 hertz. There we go. Now when I turn the knob, you can see, there we go. Cool. And I think we only really needed to go up to about here, so maybe 8 hertz. Not all the way up. Go back up here and have this one just go to 8 kilohertz. There we go. Cool. That's a little bit too much there, so I'm just going to shape the sound a little bit more. Awesome. And now let's turn that all the way down here. I don't want it to be quite down to 0. Okay, that's better, yeah. Cool. All right, there we go. So now, cool. All right. So you can see what we're doing here. We're doing some sound design stuff and setting it up so we can save this. And so I made some changes since I saved it before, so I'm going to save it again. And it's gonna put the same thing in here twice. And what I can do is I can change the name, or I can just hit return. It's gonna say, this already exists. Are you sure you want to do this? And the answer is yes, I want to do it. I want to overwrite it, so I'm going to hit OK. And once I'm sure that I'm done with it, I like it, I'm going to pull this down into my Ableton plugins here. And we could put it down in, I'm going to put this down into filters here. So you can see I've got this down in my filters here. I've got a bunch of different filters here that I like. And that's how we can set these up. And this is an instrument rack. Now this is an effect rack. The effect rack doesn't have the instrument in it. So if I pull this in again later, it doesn't have the instrument here. You have to have an instrument with it. So that's the difference between the instrument rack and the effect rack, is that the instrument rack has an instrument and the effects, and the effect rack just has the effects. Okay, so pretty cool stuff. Now, let's do one more thing with this. Let's go ahead and show one more thing here with this. Let's see. And what we're going to do is we're going to make these a bit more advanced. Okay, so we're going to use a selector to change the sound slightly over time. And what we're going to do is we're going to have multiple instruments in our instrument rack. So first of all, I'm going to lay down the same sound. We're going to start with the same type of sound here. And we're just going to use the same sound for everything right now. So we're just going to drag this in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make an instrument rack immediately. So I just click on the one instrument that I've got here, and I hit Command G. Boom. And now I've got an instrument rack. I might go ahead and name this real quick, rename it, and we're going to call this one Deep Bass Sub. Cool. Now, if I open up my, like, what are they? I don't even remember what they call this. What do they call this? The show hide chain list. If I open up the show hide chain list here, it's going to show me all my different chains. And right now we only have one chain. So I'm going to go ahead and rename this one Sub. That's going to be our sub. Go ahead and set these up to 2.15 or 2.59 rather. Okay. Cool, so I got that there. Now I'm gonna put a filter on this to keep this one subby. And the filter here, actually there's a filter built into it, so I'll just use that one. Actually, I'm not gonna use that one. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that filter off. Actually, I'm gonna keep it on because it's just changing the sound a little bit in my ears. I'm gonna put a filter here afterwards, and I'm gonna drop it onto the chain. So I'm just grabbing it and dragging it down and dropping it onto the sub chain here. And now it puts it right in here. And this is exactly how the drum racks worked. I'm going to change this to a PRD. And pull that one like that. Awesome. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this chain, hold down Option, click and drag it, and make another one, and we're going to call this one mid-high. I'm going to turn off my sub, so I'm just listening to one chain at a time. And this one, I'm going to flip the filter. There we go, so it doesn't have the low. There we go. Cool, so if we listen to these, there's a low end, and here's the high end. And I'm going to put some extra oomphy stuff on this one here. And we're going to use, let's use overdrive. Drag it onto the chain I want it to be on. Cool, use the glue compressor here. Awesome. All right, so we got that kind of bit of nastiness in there. All right, notice how it doesn't have any low end in it. That's okay. We're gonna have the low end coming from this other instrument over here. So if I put the sub back in, okay. Got that in there. And let's put another filter on here so we can open up the filter on that one. Let's see, our filter is up here. There we go. Awesome. Okay, and let's put one more instrument in here that's completely different, just to kind of get a little bit of a extra thingy thing going on here. Let's grab a instrument and a, go down here to Synth Mallets. We'll drag this one down here. Here we'll drag this big kalimba down here. I don't know if this is a sound that y'all have access to or not, but here we go. Let's go ahead. Cool. So I have this sound here. Let's go over to our envelope and doesn't actually look like it's doing anything here. Let's see. Actually, we're going to use a different sound because I don't know enough about that instrument. Let's go over here to this one here. This one here is simpler. There we go. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pitch this up an octave. I'm going to use a MIDI effect to pitch that up, drag it onto here, boom, get rid of this one. One more. Cool. There we go. Awesome. Sweet. So now I have this in here. Now, what I can do is I can say, all right, I want to take this and make it so over time it changes the color of the sound. I've got these nice frequencies in here, and I want to change this over time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and go into my chain view here. In order to do this, we have to have our chain open here. And I'm going to close out this one so we're not looking at each actual instrument that's in here. And that's just to clean up the screen so we don't have to look at it. And now I've got in here, I've got this thing called chain. I've got key, velocity, and chain. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set these all up so that as I adjust a knob, I can change the sound. So there's some kind of like giant truck rolling by over there. So, oops, I need to go the other way with it. There we go. All right, and now I'm going to map this to one of my keys on my keyboard, hit Command M, click on the blue box here, and map it to a key on my keyboard. Why are you not moving? Here, let's map it to this one here. Oh, that's annoying. Okay, well, I don't know why that's not moving. I'm just going to do it by hand. So now if I hit play, so now I can control the sound. Now, pretty cool stuff. And you can see how I can shape the sound by moving this chain here. Now the chain is set up so I can move a fader or a knob or something like that, and it will move this control right here. That's what the chain does. We can also have it set to velocity, so if you hit the key harder, it'll play certain sounds. But what we're doing is we're able to shift through our different instruments here by using this chain right here. And I can hide it if I want to hide it so I don't look at it, but here we have different ones here. So different keys would be different keys on your keyboard will play different instruments, and we're going to learn about key zones when we talk about sampling more in a couple weeks. And then velocity zones as well. I can play different, like harder or softer on my keyboard to change the sounds around. But in this case, the one that's really unique to Ableton Live is this chain mode here. Everything else we're going to talk about in a couple of weeks here. But this chain mode here allows me to use a knob or a fader or something to adjust this right here, which is pretty darn cool. So this is an instrument rack. This is a more advanced usage of an instrument rack. Awesome.